This is Ben from Testive, and we're answering an SAT citing evidence question. So in this question, we're asked to find the evidence for the answer to the previous question. The previous question asked the most likely reason that the author included commentary from Richard Howitt. And then the answer was the author most likely included this commentary to balance viewpoints included elsewhere in the passage. So let's read Richard Howitt's commentary. Richard Howitt is listed right here, and it says, it's not as though farmers haven't been affected. Last year, 10% of the state's irrigated land was left to lie fallow due to the drought. And Richard Howitt, Professor Emeritus of Agricultural and Resource Economics at UC Davis, predicts that these losses will only increase this year. So Richard Howitt's position is that actually farmers are taking sort of a bad rap from this drought, and that it's going to get worse for farmers. Okay, so if that's Richard Howitt's position, and the reason for it is to balance viewpoints included elsewhere in the passage, well, balancing a viewpoint means providing a viewpoint that's sort of opposite or contrasting. So we want to look for which piece of evidence here provides a contrasting viewpoint to Richard Howitt. Now, Richard Howitt seems to be on the, I guess to a certain extent, on the side of the farmers, right? Saying that they're already paying a cost. So we want a piece of evidence here that shows the opposite. Okay. Now, I could go through each of these pieces of evidence. Let's see here. 36 to 38. For instance, last year was the first time in history that California began to limit private well groundwater use by property owners, making the state the last one in the West to do so. All right, so for a long time, we didn't place any restrictions on farmers, and then we started to in California. But so to some extent, this is, I guess, a little bit the opposite of Richard Howitt, but we'll see that this is actually just a small step, and also it's not really a viewpoint. So it's hard to see that it's balanced. Lines 12 to 18. Madeline Glickfeld, director of the UCLA Water Resources Group, says that the state is in a much more alarming position now than it was a year ago. She's adamant that in order to make it through this crisis, California will need to rethink how they value water-guzzling landscape features such as golf courses and bright green gardens. Okay, so at first, it seems that maybe this is a different viewpoint. It is different, but Madeline Glickfeld is basically saying we do need to place restrictions on things like residential water use. So in some sense, she might be aligned with Richard Howitt, because she's not saying we need to limit farmers' water use. She's saying, well, we need to do more about urban water use. 19 to 22. Yet critics argue that these measures still do not address the elephant in the room. Most of California's water, about 80%, is consumed by the state's agricultural industry, but the executive order is directed at urban water use. Okay, so this is critics saying that the measures that we've taken need to be stronger against the agricultural industry. That's the opposite of the point. Well, it's not the opposite, but that's the point that's given that has to be balanced by Richard Howitt, who is saying, well, farmers are already paying a price. So this is going to be the correct answer right here, because it's in contrast to Richard Howitt's opinion, and we know that his opinion was given to balance viewpoints included elsewhere.